we got to, we're talking generally about the expenses.
Financial,
and that sort of
yes.
thing. Aye. Did it cause any bother, the finances, or friction or anything like that, or was it clearly understood before groups went to you that, well, all right, their expenses and travel expenses and the accommodation were provided, but there wasn't much else because of lack of funding to... You see where I'm going here?
Exactly. Well, in general,
Uh-huh.
we had no problems whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a couple of occasions where there was problems.
Uh-huh.
And the biggest problem was the festival was going up and up.
Yes.
So we started a St. Patrick's Day get together in the Stade de France in Paris.
Okay, right.
And the grade 1 bands had a good contract, flying to Paris. Accommodation was okay, but it wasn't a 5-star.
No.
Each band were getting £2,000 each for 2 concerts. And the first year went okay, no problems. The second year, it was a new treasurer, and there was a bit of mishap in the payment at the end of the second night.
Right, and?
Only with one band.
Right. And that's the Strathclyde Police Pipe Band. And I happen to know because you and I have discussed this
Oh, right,
in
aye,
the
aye.
past.
Sorry, well,
And it's to say from my point of view of observation, it was a misunderstanding as to let the other party off the hook a wee bit, as far as I'm concerned, because I know I think the chap in charge of the police band, he wasn't really in charge of it. He was a high-ranking officer who happened to be there, and he took on the mantle of trying to negotiate with the parties who were organising the event, and unfortunately, because of his lack of experience and knowledge and the background to this, he went off half-cocked at the whole thing. You're talking about maybe a wee lack of experience of it from one or more persons, and the organised thing. There was an altercation verbally, and it wasn't a great outcome really at the end of the day.
no.
Was that summed up?
I was led to believe, even from the Toronto days, Alan,
Aye.
that the police, it was by police laws that a high-ranked officer or sergeant or whatever had to travel with the band.
Wasn't
Now
it
that
really,
happened in Toronto.
Aye, I think it was just a freebie, and somebody was...
That's correct.
Aye.
But during the times in Toronto, the 3 times I was there,
Aye.
the first year the band were a bit,
Aye.
but there was no problems. But that particular guy, he was treated like a lord when he arrived. And he was sitting with the dignitaries in the centre stand. He was getting hospitality and all the rest of it. And then, in the second night, he got a ticket to go and watch the concert. But it wasn't with the dignitaries, and that started him off. He just lost the place completely. And obviously, he went back and he was starting to rant and rave with the band. And one thing led to another. And when it came to the payout, had the money. They were asked to go to the treasurer's office at 5:30 that night.
Mm-hmm.
The treasurer was late.
Well, that's no unusual for Bretons, is it?
I know, yes. Well, when I went to Britain initially, I threw my watch away.
Aye.
It was a waste of time, but
Anyway, that was late.
There was none. He was about an hour late, to be honest, Alan.
Aye.
But I had no problem with the band whatsoever.
No.
It all transpired for that one particular person.
Do you know who the pipe major was at that particular time?
The guy,
Jimmy Wark.
Wark.
Aye.
Yes, Jimmy Wark.
Jimmy's a nice guy. You know.
Jimmy's, he would just make faces, you know.
Aye, I know. Aye. It's just
So
an unfortunate
the
thing,
band
but
never took anything at all to do with it.
I would say, really, over the piece, so you've been fortunate over all the years. That's been an exception, and really, the bands have been pretty good with you, and you've been good with them, and all that sort of stuff. You know.
Well, obviously, I did my best to get them conditions, even better conditions, and they done their best to produce.
But I remember speaking to Yannick Monge about funding. He does studies of Breton language and dance and all that sort of stuff. He's the director of some
Breton language
college or whatever for that. And it's 32 folk working for him, which he done quite a decent job, and his wife's a school teacher as well. That Yannick was telling me that it's a funny thing in France. There's maybe 30 cultural people, delegates, whatever, and they're found out to all the departments and all the rest of it through France. But we say out of 30, there's still about 22 of them are actually working in Paris. So it's very, very Paris centred.
That's correct.
The whole thing, and the local sort of control from Paris very much tightens up the purse strings just at the drop of a hat. So Britain and the other places in France, I find it very, very difficult from year to year to know what their funding is or how to disperse the funds.
Exactly.
Would that sum it up?
Yep.
Yeah. How did you go on? Did you speak a bit of French when you went across here so many years, or did you bother? Or
I've got a motto. I'll never starve and I'll never go dry. But I can understand, the likes of the festival meetings.
Aye.
I could understand what they were
discussing.
Oh, aye, yes, no problem.
Yeah.
But anything but fluent, I can assure you.
Aye, well.
My wife's much better than me.
Funny enough, I studied French at Alliance Française, as you know. And but to this day, my ear for picking up conversations in a meeting is very, very, I find it difficult. I really do. I can think of what I want to say on a one-to-one basis, and generally I can communicate that way fine. But if I'm sitting around a table, a dinner table for instance, annoyed me when everybody was speaking fluent, fast French, and I was the only one in the company that didn't understand this. And I remember Yannick Monge's turned round to me one time in a restaurant saying, "Do you understand what they're talking about?" I says, "Yannick, I've actually thought about this." I says, "And if I'm at the same dinner table and the Scots round the table in Scotland," I says, "I don't even understand what they're talking about because I'm too busy eating my food. I'm not that particularly interested." Well, so we've got to be laid back about the whole thing, because the dinner table conversation's not that great at the best of times, whatever the language is,
But I was quite lucky to a certain extent, especially in Lorient. The president,
Aye.
he was a great guy.
Aye.
His business was distribution of wine spirits,
Uh-huh.
and he had no English whatsoever.
Right.
And he used to look at me around the table, and he would get up, and he would go to behind somebody.
Aye.
So, silently,
So you left it and followed them away.
we went to a nice restaurant and a meal.
Aye. But you, through your long association, we're just going to finish up in a minute, folks, but I want to get this wee quick bit in. Well, I remember you had a certain affinity with wine, and you had an experience about getting a wee award regarding wines and all the rest of it.
That's right.
Right, tell us about that.
I was made a Chevalier of the wine from Bourgogne in the Loire Valley.
Oh, for goodness sake, right, uh-huh.
The medal's right at your back.
Right, we'll get it, let's see it. Right, okay. Need to hold that one up. Whoops. So, capture that, and I'll take a photograph of it, and we'll get it properly represented and later on. So tell us about that. What's the story?
Again, it was through the festival. You know, Piero was supplying wines, and obviously they were the suppliers to him.
Mm-hmm.
And they visited the festival, and we got involved in it was always on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
There was a pageant, maybe 200 wine growers,
Right.
and their velvets and their, it was like a Balmoral.
Aye.
And parade through the town, and then there was a rendezvous in the town hall,
Uh-huh. Yep.
and if you were being made a Chevalier on that particular year, they called your name out, and a massive glass about this size,
Uh-huh.
damn near a bottle of wine, and
Yeah. Right.
you had to drink it on stage. And after
Was it red or white?
mostly red.
Aye.
There was some rosy, but and there was obviously white, but it was mostly red.
Aye.
And after that, we retired for a banquet
Okay.
in this chateau. And we would maybe arrive in the chateau 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And that was used till late 8 at night.
Goodness sake. Uh-huh.
5-course meal, and you were drinking,
The best of wines.
oh dear.
Aye, aye.
So that was an annual visitation after that for many's a year,
That's good, eh?
by car.
Aye.
Well, it serves two purposes. It saved a lot of chopping and changing with public transport,
Aye.
and I could bring some wares back.
Bring some back.
Aye.
Aye, aye. What city was that in?
It was in Bourgogne,
Right.
which was not too far from Saumur.
Right, aye. And Chinon is there as well.
Chinon's just,
Aye.
you've got Saumur, Chinon, Bourgogne.
I've been in Saumur.
Yes, I knew you'd been,
Aye.
you had contacts
My
in
tour
Saumur.
through France by car. Marvellous.
Aye, oh,
You know, landed at Bilbao, Brittany Ferries,
Oh, you
and
went-
drove right up to Caen
aye,
and the Channel,
yeah,
and stopped at umpteen places in between.
Aye,
So
aye.
Saumur's a nice place.
Well, that was another plus. The other thing that we've not mentioned was that at one of the morning meetings, the president says, Dougie, we need a pipe band this afternoon. Which I had to be very careful with, because you give them their weekly programme, and if you wanted to slip somebody else in,
So where was this?
in Lorient.
Okay.
And this was to play the Breton astronaut off the plane in his return for the Johnson Space Centre in Houston, Texas.
Okay, right.
And that developed through 2 years, 3 years, and I eventually got an invite to the Space Centre in Texas.
For goodness sake, yeah. Aye.
I was in the simulator
Mm-hmm.
and everything.
Aye.
The captain that was sitting at the side,
Aye.
he'd been up in space 9 times.
Who is this, a Breton chap?
No, the Breton chap had been in space,
Yeah.
but this was him returning home.
How did the Breton chap go into space? Because they'd been late for the interview for a start. Listen, folks, we could sit here all day talking and some marvellous stories. You've heard just one or two, but Dougie and I have been meeting various instances over the years, solo piping in Glasgow, and been across and met in Britain and met some of his glorious friends and all the rest of it. And we've had a lot of good times together, and we're looking forward to using Barra, which Dougie doesn't think I'll be on, but I'm telling you, I'll be on the beginning of March this year, 2022. Watch this space. So, anyway, we can sit here all day, but we'll need to stop sometime. So, Dougie, thanks very much for your time to Pipers'Persuasion today, and we'll see if we can make a wee programme out of this.
It's a pleasure, Alan. It's a pleasure.
I hope you all enjoy it, folks. I know you've enjoyed the conversation today, so thanks very much.
Thanks, you.